Okay, everybody, welcome to Baron Vaughn Video, where we talk about storytelling, filmmaking, and science fiction. And tonight we're going to be talking about some science fiction stories, but the specific subgenre of political science fiction. We're going to be going through books, and perhaps we'll also do series and movies. That'll probably be a later one. But my guest tonight again is my brother Aaron, who is among the people who have read more science fiction than anybody I know except for myself and possibly my nephew. So here he is, everybody. He's the aficionado in making like me. It's Aaron. Hey, how you doing, bro?
Pretty good.
Good, 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 good. Okay, cool, man. Now, yeah, I just wanted to do a little couple qualifiers before we start in kind of defining what we're talking about for political science fiction, because there are obviously a lot of books that could qualify, but I'm trying to get a real strict definition that the politics in the story is not just part of the world building, but is an integral part of the plot. And I know that's a bit of a fuzzy explanation. So something like the left hand of darkness, is very political, but to me it's more cultural, so social type things. So we'll go through this list, and don't expect a complete list because we haven't read everybody. I think we mentioned this before. Actually I have an anthology by Philip K. Dick, and like a lot of his short stories, but I don't think I've ever read any of his novels, which are seems like they would qualify for politics. And you're the same, Aaron. You haven't read much Philip K. Dick either, right?
Well, yeah, I actually did read The Man in the High Castle. Is that
Oh,
the right title?
yeah, that's very political.
Yeah, that's very political. Although, you know, what if America lost the Second World War, and so we've got Japanese on the West Coast and Nazis on the East Coast?
And China and Germany hooked up. Yeah.
Yeah, or Japan and Germany. Yeah,
Oh, it was Japan. It was Japan.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, since we're talking about it real briefly, they did do. I did not read that, but the series that they made, I don't know if you saw that, but
I did.
it lost me about
Yeah,
two
I
seasons.
mean, yeah. Okay, enough said.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I maybe liked it a little bit more than you, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't, you know, really great,
Okay.
and it went beyond the novel as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it did, because the novel is, as I recall, it's been a while since I read it, is somewhat confined to this guy dealing with the fact that he's living under this fascist American is living under this fascist regime.
Yeah, and you're sure that was Philip K. Dick? That wasn't
Oh,
like Jack.
yeah, definitely Philip K. Dick.
Okay, okay. I'm thinking, yeah, okay. Jack Vance. I haven't read much Jack Vance either. Um, so yeah, okay. Yeah, well, that's a good point. I've always heard that it was a very well regarded novel, but
Yeah.
you thought it was just kind of okay.
Well, no, I mean it's a fine novel. It's a fine
Yeah.
novel. Uh, you know, kind of like, and what did it have to say about politics? Who knows? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's kind of like, hmm,
Yeah, at least in the series, it seemed as much a setup for drama as making
yeah,
some,
yeah,
over political.
exactly, including
Oh,
political drama. Like the communist insurrection in Colorado or something.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's the other quick qualifier before we get into this list. Is it could also be books that aren't necessarily about politics overtly, but make a clear political statement. So I would give the example of Fahrenheit 451 is on this list. It's not, about the political machinations and whatnot, but it's definitely making a political statement.
Yeah, it's definitely a critique of a dystopia.
Right. Okay. All right, man. Let's get into this.
All right.
These are not. These are somewhat in chronological order, but don't hold me to the
No,
specific.
that is the order.
Yeah, I mean chronological. I mean, as far as the entire list that we'll be going through.
Okay.
Yeah, not just these. Yeah. Tell me if I goofed something up, but yeah, I hope I got all these trilogies and dual things. So the original Foundation trilogy, I read this, geez, probably 30 years ago at least, and yeah, of all the books on here, I kind of think of this is the PG-13 series, compared to some of the other ones. And to me, I've never considered Asimov like a super eloquent writer, but man, he can spin a story pretty good, and I found all of these really enjoyable, really thought provoking.
Yeah, me too. Especially, I also first read them like in the 1960s, probably. But I reread them 20 years or so ago. So,
Yeah, and did you have basically the same impression when you reread it?
um, well, I don't know about that. I mean, obviously they're dated in some ways, but again, to me, it's like the kind of like this technocratic, this notion of a technocratic movement that's going to replace a society that's collapsing. Uh, I believe in the books, not just the series on Apple. I don't know if you've seen that series, but uh, sorry, I'm kind of tired here. Uh, yeah, I don't know what to say about it. I think the real takeaway, as far as the politics in the series, is the notion that we can scientifically figure out how to predict what's going to happen, and I, Harry Seldon, will reappear in holographic form periodically to guide you on the path, and that eventually breaks down, and because of a genetic mutation of this weird leader called the Mule, who appears like in the second book, that completely disrupts uh, the whole plan, and then it
Don't
kind
say
of
don't say don't say too much in case
okay,
that
yeah,
somebody hasn't read it.
okay. So avoid spoilers is your basic thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and so the novel tries to, the series tries to deal with that disruption. What does it mean for the original effort?
Right. Yeah, and we're looking for ways to either avert or mitigate the consequences of these predicted collapses.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Shorten the collapse, reintegrate this sort of galactic-wide society.
Yeah. So yeah, good stuff. You can't go wrong reading this trilogy. I don't know about you, but I've only read like a couple of the follow-ups,
Mm.
one of them was, I think, the next to the very last one. It was like book number 8 or something, whatever it was. And dude, I just thought it was terrible. I thought it was
Yeah,
harrowing.
I listened to it in an audiobook, and yeah, I mean, first of all, that the later books go more into the whole thing with the robots, dealing with the robots and how they're interacting with humans. Uh, but yeah, I also thought the series kind of went off the rails.
Yeah, but the original trilogy, yeah, good stuff. Okay, this is a pretty obvious one, 1984, and this is another one that I read, many years ago. I think I actually read this as a early teen. I think I was like 12 or 13 when I read this, and a lot of it went over my head. Um, but I do remember this vividly. I haven't particularly wanted to reread this
Oh yeah,
because it's
it's a
so
pleasant
bleak.
book. Yes, it is. Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, my my recollection mostly is from the movie that came out, I think, in the '80s, with
John
Richard
Hurt.
Burton, Richard Burton and John Hurt,
Yeah,
among others.
right.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
but
anyway, classic notions of uh, I think it's called double think,
double speak.
double speak. There you go. Where you've got to monitor your thoughts. There's the oppression is so bad that you got to the the party line in your particular block. The world is divided into these totalitarian blocks, and you basically got the party line keeps changing, and you've got to act like, oh, it's always been true, things like that, and some really gruesome things with uh, finding things that people are most afraid of and using that to torture them with.
Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you, to this day, again, I read it once, probably close to 50 years ago, and I still remember that scene with the rats.
Oh yeah,
Not
yeah,
not
the
gonna
rat.
don't say anymore, but you know what I'm
Oh yeah,
saying. Yeah.
creepy as hell.
Yeah, yeah, brutal. So yeah, very prescient novel, and of course, Animal Farm. If it would qualify it if it was more science fiction instead of science fantasy or however they set up the world. But yeah, yeah, it's you can understand why it's had such an impact over the years. But again, not something I look forward to rereading anytime soon. Now, here's one that I actually did reread. This is another case for me, where I read this early as an early teen, and only fairly recently, maybe a few years ago, reread it. And oh, I love this cover. This is the cover of the book that I read originally. So I'm just happy. I'd completely forgotten about this. So when I was picking book covers and whatnot, I was like, oh damn, I remember that. And yeah, this is on rereading it. I didn't remember how strange this very strange tone this book had. At least
Hmm.
that's how it hit me.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I read the book. I've never reread it. I've seen movie versions, I think, of it, and also I think a great kind of knockoff based on it called Equilibrium with uh, Christian Bale. I don't know if you ever saw that. I mean, it's a B,
Oh,
very
the
B
movie
movie ish, but actually, I mean, I actually really liked it.
Equilibrium. Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't.
didn't see it, didn't like it, or
I saw it and I liked a lot of it, but overall I found it a little. I found the payoff not very satisfying, I guess. But I
right.
overall I liked it.
But anyway, the basic thing about Fahrenheit 451 again is that uh, the government has to control what people read, and that's basically the politics of it.
Right. Yeah. And real quick before we go on to the next one, yeah, the thing that struck me when I reread this is some of it's almost it's so exaggerated that it almost comes across as parody, almost because
Which
it's so
equilibrium pretty much is. It's
yeah,
very much so.
it's so extreme in the way they talk and the consumerism of the society and the mindsets of the people who are just
Oh
all a bunch
wow.
of sheep, and
Oh
yeah,
wow.
it
That's
was
very interesting. Yeah, very sort of critique of 50s culture, kind of
yeah,
like conformism,
right.
and the consumerism that sort of got underway big time. We've
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So again, not a lot about politics, but
except for the big one, like we're going to control what the hell you guys read.
yeah, right. Yeah, they didn't have to say it. You got it from the story and the context and whatnot. Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, I would encourage you to reread it sometime because it's a pretty quick read. Okay, Ursula K. Le Guin, The
Oh,
Dispossessed. Now, there's always this thing that goes back and forth. I hear, like you hear the thing, is Left Hand of Darkness your favorite Le Guin, or is The Dispossessed your favorite Le Guin? And this is, I got a slight preference for this one over Left Hand, but I know a lot of people it's the other way around.
well, as a matter of fact, yeah, I actually did some research into the book, Wikipedia, and I actually finally found my Cambridge history of Cambridge Guide to Science Fiction Literature, and there's actually a couple of articles like on utopian and dystopian sci-fi and on political sci-fi, and I was trying to remind myself why I did, I kind of like didn't like it, and
Oh,
there's like three different systems in the book. It's a planetary system. The dispossessed are on the moon in this anarcho-syndicalist society, which, frankly, finding out that Ursula K. Le Guin, that was kind of like she was attracted to that kind of thinking. This is in the 60s. There's a guy called Paul Goodman that was big in the New Left at the time. And so she was sort of exploring those ideas, obviously in very critical fashion. But neither that society nor the capitalist, very oligarchic kind of capitalist society, nor the communist society come off well in the book. It was, so it was kind of a bleak experience. There was nothing really good. And what's kind of interesting about her critique of the anarchist society. So again, anarchism as opposed to libertarianism usually has some sense of the importance of solidarity in the community. That's why it's kind of like a left wing as opposed to a right wing kind of philosophy. And the main character finds it increasingly oppressive. Like there's all this sort of moralism that kind of like is stultifying. And another interesting point is that main character, Sevik, the physicist, uh, was modeled apparently on J. Robert Oppenheimer,
oh wow,
which
really?
her parents and Ursula knew. They actually had some sort of dealings with him. So, I mean, that's sort of curious in itself. But
Huh.
yeah, it's like uh, so. The problem with the anarchic society is that there's all this heavy duty moralizing all the time, which how can you be your authentic self when there's this sort of oppressive community norms put on you? Like he's got to work, and he does. He does hard work in the field, you know, uh, among other things. And the other thing is, there's not a lot of room for political discussion, oddly, in this anarchic society, which is also kind of bizarre. It's like things are structured more on an individual level, and somehow, anyway, that's sort of the critiques I was reading in these summary reviews.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I just found the the main character's journey throughout, and I thought him coming, I don't just face to face with his own beliefs, his own moral compass.
Right.
Well, I just found it really powerful. I mean, Left Hand of Darkness was very powerful also, and I think that's that's a connection with both books that emotionally, it really gets to you.
Yeah, exactly. Ursula, look, she's such a great writer.
Yeah.
One of my favorites.
Me too. Me too. Okay.
I did not
James.
read this, so it's all on you, dude.
Oh, sorry, man. Oh,
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to. I mean, we'll talk about a book you've read I haven't, and a series I've read that you haven't at the end. But I sorry about that. Okay, well, I'll just give a gloss over this. I think you would like pretty good. It's as much kind of religious and um, really looking at some of these moral questions. I think you'd really like this
Hmm.
book. Has it ever been on your radar?
I've never heard of it before.
What? It's a Nebula Award winner
Well,
or Hugo.
now, is it a novel?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, a Hugo winner? Okay. Uh, James Blish. I associate him with Star Trek stories.
Oh, yeah. He wrote
Back to
another
60.
thing. It was one of the what do they call fix up novels where he wrote like a couple chapters and they put it together. A novel called I think Devil's Day, and it's wild. It's wild. It's kind of fantasy, but I just really dug it. I mean, it was on we were on vacation somewhere, and I had this book that I'd never read because it got this really garish science fiction cover where it looks like it's all creepy and whatnot. And I started reading it, and by the end, I was blown away.
Okay. And when did you read this?
Oh yeah, probably a good 30 years ago, something like
Okay,
that.
the 90s or something?
Yeah, yeah, that sounds about
It
right.
was not that long. Well, for us, it's not that long ago.
Yeah,
Seems like just yesterday.
just
Uh,
like yesterday. But
okay,
anyway, yeah, this I think has a lot of elements that you would at least appreciate, and I find James Blish to be I've probably read more like a lot of authors, more short stories and novellas by him than novels. But I think you'd really like this one. It's do you want to hear the basic plot, or do you want to
exactly.
just get it?
Or yeah. So what's the, as it were, the what is it? What is it trying to talk about?
Okay, yeah, it's a first contact to a degree, but the central character is a priest or a religious figure, and he encounters we've encountered this race of kind of lizard like people, and they have this they're just inherently moral, right? They just do the
Okay.
right thing.
Yeah.
So
So,
this
so
religious
they
figure,
struggle less with being moral than humans do. Is that what you're saying?
well, I mean, it has something to say about that. I mean, it hits the religious thing. So the religious figure obviously is like, well, we're all sinners except this whole race of creatures appears to not be sinners.
Right.
So that there's like some wrestles with that. I don't remember a lot of the specifics, but it's also, on a wider scale, it's looking at, colonialism and imperialism, and yeah, it's good. It's a good meaty book, not pretty quick read, a little dated, but yeah, definitely worth reading. I would put it on your list, man.
Okay. Well, I
All
will.
right. So for anybody looking at these books, they're all completely independent books, but they kind of people have kind of considered them kind of John Brunner's trilogy of political societal statements. Stand on Zanzibar was, amongst other things, largely about overpopulation. The Sheep Look Up was largely about polluting the planet and what that would be like. And then Shockwave Rider kind of got more into the like almost early cyberpunk type stuff. And you've probably heard this before. John Brunner actually coined the term worm for a computer virus.
Hmm.
So it was, prescient in some ways. I know that you weren't all that crazy about Shockwave Rider, right?
Right. And I didn't read The Sheep Look Up.
Yeah, it's another one of those. It's really grim, but it's so it's unique. It's very very entertaining at times. It's actually funny. Um, but yeah, I think among the three, to me, the standout by far is Stand on Zanzibar. This is probably in my top 10 all-time favorites. I just love this book.
Right. We should say, yeah, like Stan and Zanzibar is a good example of what was called the new wave in
Yeah.
sci-fi in the early 60s. So it was like sort of experimenting with style, kind of like literary experimentation. So I know you were especially impressed with the kind of weird stuff he would throw in periodically in the book. But the other thing was the big part of the plot of the thing was that there's a society in Africa, specific tribe that are also very peaceable, get along with everybody, no issues at all, and they're trying to figure out why that is, or they're just sort of impressed with that and trying to figure out what the
What are they
reason for
doing
the
over there? Yeah.
yeah. And I don't. I guess I shouldn't say what is
Yeah,
fun
don't.
in terms. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we could have a spoiler conversation, but
Yeah, I know it's very difficult to talk about these
But
without.
there's also a lot of other stuff going on as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. I really like the book. It's a very substantial book.
Yeah, yeah, and for people who if you were new to science fiction, I would not read this as your first
No,
science fiction book. It's really dense.
right. If you're a literati, you might like the style, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I love the style. You know, ever since who was it? The Alfred Bester did it in The
Uh,
Stars My Destination, where he had the type, warped around and all that stuff in the book, right? The printed book, they'd have
oh
the
wow.
type. The type was all warped around when he was
Oh
jaunting.
wow. I
Yeah,
didn't.
right.
My
That's like at the end, when it's already mind blowing, and then you get all this. It's like, what the hell's going on? Yeah, that's a good one. That doesn't quite qualify as political science fiction, but it's got a lot of social commentary along the way. you
Right.
know.
Ah,
Okay, now this one, I've only read the first book. And Aaron, have you read the two sequels or just one of them
oh wow. I actually there's another one called Regenesis that she wrote. Uh,
related to this universe?
uh, Definitely. And
Oh,
I wasn't even aware of these other two.
oh,
And I
wow.
was, and plus, I'm pretty sure that Regenesis came out 10, 10 years or more after Cytine.
Oh, okay. So do you think these are like earlier sequels then?
I guess.
I
I,
mean, again,
I've never even heard of them.
yeah, yeah, I hadn't either. I mean, I remember you telling me that there was another book that was written, quite a bit after. So probably wasn't originally planned as a trilogy or a quadrilogy. If there's actually a fourth book, and I don't for the life of me, I don't remember what happens in Cytine all that much. Only that I really liked the style and the characters, the writing. I thought, yeah, C.J. Cherry,
Oh,
she's killer.
oh, absolutely. I even remember C.J. Cherry from there's this book by Joe Walton that won the Nebula called Among Others,
Hmm.
about this woman who really loves science fiction, reads all these authors. One of the
Oh
people,
yeah,
one of the people she talks about a lot is C.J. Cherry. She loves C.J. Cherry.
yeah, yeah.
Oh
She,
yeah, yeah. And I haven't. I've only read two of her books, but I understand that she's actually uh, got a lot of good stuff. Actually,
yeah, yeah. She's pretty learned. Yeah, she's written one of my favorite novellas of all time called Pots, and it was about I think it was an archaeologist, and they found this very very ancient civilization, right? You've seen that scenario a million times, but
yeah.
what she does with it was just so it was mesmerizing. I was just like, it's one of my favorite all-time novellas. Yeah, good stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
so we can't really talk about there's not
Okay, but we can talk about. I at least I remember enough of Cytine. The basic idea is that there's these. It's an isolated station. There's actually a book prior to this called Down Below Station, which I didn't read either, also by C.J. Cherry,
I've
which
read
has.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
you did read that?
Yeah, I
Did
I
you
think
care
it
for
I
it?
think it won a Hugo or a Nebula or came close or something, but I thought I thought it was kind of vanilla for me.
Okay. Well, at any rate, it's somewhere out in space in this isolated station. This group is kind of like taken over the society, and there's these super smart people, right? And they're trying to, they do a lot of genetic engineering and whatnot. And you can get, it's a very oppressive society, even for the people that are part of this elite group. And so she mostly tracks the people in this elite group that are kind of running things. Uh, and that is big in the plot also in Regenesis, where they try to, the people that don't like this start figure out how to rebel against it. But anyway, yeah, I thought it was an exceptional look at kind of like surveillance and things like that, and manipulation, things
So
like that.
did you like the second book about as much as the first?
I wouldn't say as much, but
Yeah,
I did like the second.
yeah, yeah. And it felt like a
Yeah,
not a
it felt
huge leap in the story.
definitely. Again, I had no idea about the books. I recall that the main character in Cytine was actually near her end in the second book, so it
Oh,
was still around.
okay, okay. All right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm actually kind of anxious to get back into it, so I want to reread
Oh,
Site
complete
Team.
in one volume. I wonder if the betrayal and the vindication, originally it was like split, and notice it says complete in one volume. I wonder if that's why there were multiple books originally, and then it
Oh,
was because I remember it's a pretty thick book, Citeen,
yeah.
or this version on the left.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, and I was going through this and seeing the follow up books, but I didn't do a lot of research into where they fit in and that kind of thing. But yeah, yeah, I'm anxious to get back into it, so I would reread the original before I read it, and I'll get clear about about the order. Because right, I mean, you're now curious about reading these other ones, yay?
Yeah, again, my strong suspicion based on this complete in one volume business is that
They
Citeen
combined the two.
that those are actually part of this big one volume book, which again is a very thick book.
All right, and they just split them off. I say, yeah, yeah, good, good. In any case,
Oh, the
all
wind up
right.
girl. I love this
Yeah,
book.
no, oh man, Paolo Bacigalupi, or however you say his name. This knocked my socks off when I first read it. Yeah, I really was impressed with this. I mean, I have to admit, maybe you didn't have the same experience. I found it at a certain point like really difficult to remember which faction was
Oh
doing
yeah.
what and was working with the other faction, and so it got a little foggy for me at times, but it didn't dampen my enjoyment of the book. Yeah, I thought it was really good.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So basic setup on the politics. Future world climate change gotten really bad. There's a lot of flooding in Thailand. Uh, these agricultural companies control these seeds that uh, only they can grow. Or,
Yeah.
I'm sorry that they cannot they don't go to seed. They don't. You can't. You have to keep buying them. Okay, and the same companies have set out these genetic plagues that have wiped out most of the other crops in the world. So there's this weird, uh, oppressive kind of thing going on, and an American from one of these companies, who's actually a kind of ambivalent character throughout the book, uh, is interesting, and the wind-up girl is also extremely interesting. This is that elephant, as I recall, or whatever they call it. I think they call it something else. But the wind-up girl she's genetically engineered and is kind of like a sex toy, and kind of decides she wants to be something else. So
Yeah, don't
yeah,
say too
that's what I'll say.
good.
So
No, no,
yeah,
perfect.
yeah. So it's a good, you know, rebellion against the dystopia kind of book.
Yeah.
Although with very kind of uh, lot of surprises, characters having to make a lot of bad compromises throughout the book.
Yeah, yeah. This is one of those ones. It's it's dense, but it's also
Oh,
I found it to be pretty much a page turner.
yeah, exactly. I did too. Also by him, also with a climate theme is the Water Knife, set in the American Southwest.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go into any details about it, but I also I didn't like it as much as the Wind Up Girl, But I like that pretty much as well. And then he seemed to go off into what do you call it?
YA.
Yeah, YA.
Yeah, I read The Drowned Cities by
Okay, did you
him.
like that at all?
Huh?
Yeah, did you care for that?
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, not as much as this one, but yeah, it wasn't like clearly YA, but it did have a lot of preteen or teen type characters in it. But it wasn't, and it was pretty brutal at
Yeah.
times. So
As is the water knife.
yeah,
And yeah,
I think they're I
it's
think
well worth the read.
yeah, I think they're part of the same universe.
Yeah, could well be. Yeah, the water knife is set in the American Southwest.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically where the Drowned Cities was, but I think yeah, I think they're related. Was the one you read, was it not obvious but kind of obvious that it was a young adult?
Oh no, yeah, no, I'm pretty. The water knife, I don't believe is YA.
Okay, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Good stuff. I've only read the two novels by him, but yeah, I would read other things by this guy. It's good stuff. Okay, and here's another instance where I've read the first book, but
Yeah, I've
haven't
read all
read
three.
haven't read the sequel. So yeah, I mean I really liked Red Mars. I didn't feel compelled to read the sequels, not because I didn't enjoy the book. It just if you're like me,
Yeah,
you've got a stack of two reads that are about 10 feet tall.
exactly.
So
Oh yeah.
what's your overall impression of the entire series?
Okay. Well, so first of all, yeah, Kim Stanley Robinson's actually one of my favorites. Another one of my
Oh,
favorites. Although recently I'm becoming a little dissatisfied with some of his stuff, but that's another thing. This series I really like. I had some interesting concepts. Obviously, Red Mars is like this right from the get. There are people that are the expedition to Mars that kind of like want to run their own show there, and that's the politics where something happens about that. Green Mars is about uh, whether or not they're going to really terraform Mars to make it livable for a large population. And Blue Mars is kind of, without giving away more of the series plot, kind of like then it gets very it's sort of like uh, they come up with a constitution for Mars. Uh, they anyway they have to deal with immigrants from Earth, which is just sinking into its climate abyss in the series. So anyway, interesting ideas like the idea about somebody solves the longevity problem with the what is it the I can't remember the term telomeres or something on the end of DNA strands. I know you've heard about this.
yeah.
Supposedly, and I don't know how much this is, how true this is, but supposedly, like DNA cannot just keep replicating itself. It loses the tail ends, the buffer ends on the strands, and then over time, that creates a problem. At least according to the book. And so they figure out how to compensate for that on Mars. And so the characters in Red Mars are still around for Green Mars and Blue Mars. The
That's one
ones
way
that
to keep the characters, isn't
exactly the ones, of course, that haven't died for one reason or another, which I won't go into. But yeah, it is interesting. So it's the struggles with trying like self determination on the planet, but also like this explicit, especially in the latter book, uh, constitutional agenda. What's the best way to set things up?
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
I remember the first book being again a good mix of the politics with like how do you structure society, and I remember there was starting to be some kind of rebellion by some of the people in the colony.
yeah, conflict between different groups
Yeah.
in among the expedition, which is somewhat sizable. It's not like a little 10 people or something. I think the initial expedition is a couple hundred people or something. But yeah, definitely factions start forming, and that leads to problems. And he sets it up right from the beginning of Red Mars. He hints right at the beginning that there's going to be some issues with that.
Some issues.
Issues, exactly.
Damn factions.
Exactly.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I eventually do want to read the other two, and I don't think I need to reread the first one. I think I remember enough of it, and I think it'd be okay to just jump to the next one, even though it's been a number of years.
Again, you can just look at you can get book summaries, various places.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, sure. Okay, here's another. Yeah, and now right, it's like 4 books. Oh, you're killing me, But
they're short. They're all short.
Yeah, they're all pretty not super short, but not it's not a. The thing that's unique about this is these books are all very distinctly different.
Very distinct.
Even though it's the same, the same society, the same world with the same general issues. The first two, it would help to read in order because if I'm recalling correctly, the Stone Canal does at least mention something that happens in the star fraction. But even if you didn't, right, they each stand by themselves as very, I just absolutely love this series.
I did too. And I have to say too that the one I like the best is actually the Stone Canal.
Yeah.
Maybe surprisingly, the idea of uploading as a big thing in the Stone Canal and issues with that, which I don't know. I just found it very, very interesting. We should say too, like the politics is officially in the back, especially the star fraction, the Sky Road becomes very prominent. There's this sort of Trotskyite groups that are, and if you're not familiar, so, Lenin took over the Russian Revolution, led the Russian Revolution, the Bolsheviks in Russia. They were like a minority part of this Russian party, the Bolsheviks, as opposed to the Mensheviks. But they were more hardcore, formed cadres that actually do violent revolution. Whereas, anyway, so they take over. Lenin doesn't live that long. Stalin takes over, and things go really bad, really fast. Trotsky, who was a really critical part of the initial revolution and the Civil War that immediately followed, is basically chased out of Russia and eventually killed in Mexico with an ice pick by an assassin from Stalin. Okay, so but in the 30s, Trotsky wrote this book, The Revolution Betrayed, about his opinion about what Stalin was doing. So believe it or not, there are still kind of like these little Trotskyite groups. Ken McLeod is not really a Trotskyite, okay, but he uses them as significant parts of the first and last of these books, and that's a lot of the politics in it. It's
Yeah,
just about
yeah.
these idealistic people, uh, you know, fighting for justice.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Again, the politics were, yeah, very, very front and center, but the storytelling. I always make such a big deal about the story. If it
Oh,
didn't have the really good storytelling behind it, it could have been just like I don't know, like a history lesson or something. Like, here's what could happen.
oh,
Just
absolutely.
have really great characters. The pacing, and again, it just amazes me how different each of the four books are, but they're still anchored in the same world. That was
Right.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Love them.
Yep, good stuff.
I'm not a Trotskyite either.
Yeah,
No,
Aaron, come on, man.
no, really.
Okay, here's another one.
Okay.
Said where I've read the first one
And didn't read the second. I've read
and
both.
I haven't read the second one yet. I
Okay.
definitely do want to read it.
Okay, very good. Because yeah, I don't know. Did you really like the first one, or just sort of?
I didn't like absolutely. I wasn't
Okay.
blown away by it, but I thought it was really really solid, and I was by the end, I was very interested to revisit this world and see what was next in the story.
Yeah,
I put it like what way high, but I mean, you tell me, is it worth reading the follow?
I think it's worth doing the follow up read. I
Yeah,
do. I enjoyed the second book, uh, and kind of like the politics of this is that Arcadia Martin is actually, I think, an historian, something like that. Knows a lot about the Byzantine Empire, which is the East Roman Empire after the collapse in the West. It kept going for another 1,000 years. It expanded, it contracted, but it went on for another 1,000 years and became Byzantium, which is present day. Uh, it became Constantinople,
Constantinople.
right? And then now it's Istanbul, right? When the Turks took over. But anyway, the theme of the book is it's kind of like the Armenians dealing with the Byzantine Empire. They're these little small fry group. Actually, I had no idea how significant the Armenians were as merchant and intermediaries in France. I get this from what's his face, Neil Stevenson, his series, "The System of the World." You probably never read any of those books,
I
but he
haven't.
goes into a lot of history. The Armenians are actually fairly significant intermediaries, but they're small fries. They're they exist just north of present day Turkey, and they were always on the outskirts, if not included in the Byzantine Empire, and they had to figure out how to deal with this fucking huge, you know, civilization, which has a lot of appeal, and yet it can fuck you over. And that's kind of like the main character in a memory called Empire is someone from this little dinky space society who's now adjacent to the expansion of this empire, which has weird culture, very interesting culture, but kind of weird. And they get a lot into the culture and how she's kind of seduced by the culture, but finds people who are also want to back her up and are, not pleased with everything going on. Uh, I don't know. I really enjoyed it, and the second book, which takes a turn, which I won't go into.
But it is concluding. There's not a
Uh, it,
planned.
it's um, I would say another alien race shows up to fuck with both the Dinky group and the Empire.
Oh, so
And
it's
I won't give away kind of like how the first book ends, because that gives you some idea of why she might be still involved in the second book. But again, the Dinky Society is in between now. This new fucking rapacious race that's coming in, and the Empire. What are we going to do about them? And it's actually very interesting. Let's put it that way. Or at least it's interesting enough to me. I mean,
yeah,
you,
yeah.
you may like it, you may not like it, but I don't know. I at least enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it because yeah, I thought it was very very well written, very thought provoking, and yeah, again, very strong characters.
Right, exactly. Okay.
Okay,
Now, did
we
you
got what? Yeah, have
you
you?
ever
Are
read
you detecting a pattern
Alien?
here? I've read the first one.
Oh, you did read the first one. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh, okay. In a lot of ways, I thought that was the best of the three. Anyway,
the first
uh,
one.
yeah, the first one. But I like the whole series, and I like these weird notions of selfhood, what a self is. The main character is a ship. It's the intelligence of the ship, but it's the kind of intelligence that can reduce itself to a crew member. So there's a lot of interesting playing with notions like that in the whole series, uh, particularly the first one. So they're part. The ship was part of this big empire, the Ratch, uh, and a weird thing has happened where the head, the emperor, it's gotten so big that the emperor decides to divide himself into two cells to rule over different parts, and then he gets very paranoid about his other self and what his other self is up to. But I don't know. I just found that fascinating, and so that whole thing about selfhood is just very interesting. And there's a whole lot, throughout about this. In essence, an AI is much more moral than the fucking empire, and consistently throughout all three books,
Yeah.
she's much more concerned about her crew, etc., and is much more concerned about doing the right thing
Yeah.
in different circumstances.
Consequences.
Yeah, be damned, as it were. So I don't know. I at least found it an interesting read.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember enough about the first book. The ending I remember just got pretty wild.
Oh yeah,
You start confronting the emperor or one of his cells or
so,
however that went down. I just thought like that. Yeah, this is good stuff.
right.
Pretty crazy. Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna read through the rest of these.
Okay,
Okay, now this as a whole, um, again, I just put up here
the
the
first
four
four
books
books.
the four books that I've read, but you could speak more to the series as a whole because just based on these four books, I wouldn't quite consider these political science fiction, but you're saying as the
Uh,
whole series gets a lot deeper into that part of it.
yeah, exactly. And you can see intimations of that in like the player of games, right? Who picks up the guy and wants him to, he's a really good game player, and the culture minds decide that they want him to go to this other culture because they want to intervene because this other culture is pretty nasty to its own people, and so they're going to intervene. and they're going to send this guy doesn't realize quite what he's getting into. Uh, and so the
I mean,
the
can you say anything about like the whole? I mean, what is there? Is it like 10, 11 books?
there's 9 novels and a novella with short stories.
Oh,
I
okay.
think it's called
Can
State of the
can
Art.
can you say anything about kind of the whole scope of the whole series without spoiling anything?
Yes, I think
Huh.
so. So it's very much about, so the culture is like this post scarcity society where the human like creatures, I don't think they're actually supposed to be human, by the way, but at any rate, they're presumably somewhat like us, bipedal, also, kind of like evolved creatures. And they've turned things over to very advanced AIs. There's a little drones that go around, which a lot of them are extremely smart and very good at manipulating the people who are pampered for the most part. I wish they had gone into that actually more. How in within the culture society, they're keeping all the people happy, the biological people happy all the time. But it's kind of like
It
you
has
know,
consequences.
well, yeah, it's and they don't really explore that enough, I don't think. But at any rate, not only is this sort of a huge, a big post scarcity society spanning several, a lot of systems, big, powerful, do gooder society, in essence, uh, who has trouble keeping their nose out of other people's business in other societies. Let's put it that way. And you can see why, because for the most part, whenever they get involved with some other group, you realize this other group needs to be gotten dealt with. They're not really, uh,
You're not feeling like they're oppressing them. You're feeling like, right?
they're
They got to grab
yeah,
them by the ear, and you guys need a timeout.
or yeah, or something like that. But it involves a lot of, their interventions do involve in bloodshed, manipulation. And so Banks's point of view seems, he's ambivalent about all this stuff. Some of the characters, including the minds, are ambivalent about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, and, the series is like, I have to admit, Excision, I actually should probably go back and read that. But I also was, God, it seemed to be trying to do something and didn't quite do it, is the way I felt about that book.
Yeah,
Uh,
Aaron. I was wondering about that because I liked all of the books except Accession.
yeah,
I actually didn't care for it, and when I was grabbing these screenshot cover shots, that supposedly is one of his highest rated in the whole series.
well, that is interesting because, yeah, I also would, like I say, I'm curious to go back and try to read it again to see if I can make more sense of it. It has some interesting ideas, uh, but it just seems kind of goofy. And all
Yeah.
the weird intership communications just seem kind of goofy to me.
Yeah, and the way the human was trying to integrate into another alien race,
And they didn't want it,
actually, had the opportunity to become one of the other race if he wanted to.
and they didn't
Uh,
like it. The culture,
well, no, he was actually considering it from what I remember, and he liked them. They were very aggressive, very assertive, very gung ho, go for it kind of race of aliens. So the culture is naturally going, okay, these guys might be getting a little out of hand.
yeah, exactly.
you know,
Yeah, yeah. It seemed like the culture felt threatened by
yeah.
them. And they're also kind of like spooky enough that you don't quite get what their deal is. This new alien group.
Yeah, they just seem like Vikings in outer space almost. Yeah, I agree with that word goofy because I found some of the interactions with that race to be just kind of I don't know. It just didn't click with me. It didn't feel very believable. It's almost cartoonish. Almost yeah, it just didn't land for me. But
Yeah,
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 I've enjoyed the other ones, and I've told you, yeah, player of games I really liked.
yeah. Banks has kind of a weird sense of humor that pops up in all these
Yeah.
actually. Uh, okay, the rest of the books are Intervision, which it's kind of like the sort of the mirror face of Excision in that instead of this big galactic, you know, super several galactic thing going on, it's one little planet, one very primitive planet, and obviously
So
it's a
he does a lot. He does a lot of different things
oh yeah,
throughout the
definitely.
series. Yeah.
And you may or may not like that one. Uh, Obviously, the culture does show up, and I won't say any more than that. Uh, but then I like Look to Windward. Also, like the mind's having a lot of second thoughts about. Uh, Consider Phoebus as this big war with remember that weird uh, race they were fighting, and consider Phoebus. I don't know if you remember that weird guys that they were just so determined to like fight you and stuff. I don't. That had repercussions, and that's dealt with in Look to Windward, the sixth book.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. So
and there's some
there's a
ambivalence
real
about yeah, and so that's interesting. And then the last three books are also kind of like his cap his career. There's a book about this race that actually sends its citizens to virtual hell purposely to scare them into being moral. That's one of the,
Hey, that sounds familiar.
yeah. Uh, so, and the culture has second thoughts about that, as you can imagine. And that's like one of the main themes of
Yeah.
that book, surface detail. Like they've got these out of order. Matter, which I, I don't know. I just enjoyed the books. Again, they're kind of weird. Uh, they're
No,
all
I mean,
they're
yeah,
all
it's a very, it's a very I would say well respected series, and a lot of people like it. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely read Banks again. It's unfortunate that my last one
yeah,
was
was kind of
that one.
yeah.
But yeah, I would keep reading it, and perhaps get through the whole series, or I might hit you up for some of your favorites and read like half
Just
of
read
them or
them.
something. Okay, for the last two things on our list, because we're already clocked
Over an
over an
hour.
hour here. This is a book you have read, I have not, but
Okay.
it sounded like it was definitely one to put on this list as one of the best.
Yeah, and here I would qualify that. So it's I was looking for a group, sort of utopian fiction, is the subgenre. Modern, and I think your the Terra Ignota thing is next, which I think I'm going to find more interesting. Uh, I had certain style problems with this book. She's not a bad writer at all. If anything, she writes too much at times. But it had interesting ideas. It has this interesting idea of it's also a sort of climate. thing where, and First Contact, where these two races show up together to rescue the Earthlings and take them to their Dyson ring. You're familiar with Dyson rings,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Kind of like Ringworld, right?
Yeah, exactly. Why? Because technological societies always seem to mess things up and screw up their home planet. And things have gotten so bad that we're here to rescue you. And the U.S. government, this is set in the future, 50 years or so, where things have gotten really bad. There are hurricanes regularly hitting the East Coast, typhoons all over the Pacific. The corporate sector has kind of shrunk as its influence has kind of shrunk. The U.S. government has kind of shrunk, and there's a lot of these little small communities, and the community of interest is like this small. They're trying to what they can do to ameliorate the effects of climate change in their way. That's their whole purpose. This community in Maryland, and they have this network. They have all these things. They always have these things in their heads to connect with each other and discuss things. And it has interesting ideas about like embedding the values of the community in the network, and also somehow weighting discussions and finding ways to come to some usually consensus about what we should do. Not always. Sometimes there are significant disagreements, but a big part of the plot is that group that gets contacted doesn't want to give up on the Earth and tries to convince these aliens, which are not, these are good aliens, by the way. They're actually
good aliens.
They're trying to save us, okay? They came specifically to save us. Yeah. They've been looking around and they think, thank God we arrived early enough. We've been going across these other cultures and they're all dead. So we're just here to rescue you. And so they're trying to convince these aliens that, wait a minute, there's a third way. We don't have to give up on the Earth. So, I mean, it was interesting. I'll put it that way. It was definitely it was an interesting book. It has other things going on in it as well, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, is your impression of it something you think that I would like?
I'm not sure.
Oh.
You might like it, or you might have some of the same problems I had with the book, and
gotcha.
that might or might not turn you off.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I'm not going to go into there's a lot of other things going on.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, it sounded interesting to me. The little bit I was reading about it as I was, grabbing the cover shot, it sounded pretty interesting. And that's interesting because this series that I read, I mean, it sounds very. This is one of the most overtly political series I've ever read in my life.
I looked up Wikipedia for the series, and I just read the first part, and I was going through all these different laws that you can volunteer yourself into these different groups, which follow these different sets of laws. So it felt like a fairly non-oppressive society. I don't know. Yeah, it's very explicitly political. Written by a historian. Ada Palmer is a historian. Like I told you, I saw this interesting interview she did with Paul Krugman, the economist, about her book, Inventing the Renaissance. That the Renaissance was actually several different things, and in different country, it has different dates as to what it even means to talk about the Renaissance. So I don't know. She's sort of interesting. So you tell me, did you tell me about the series?
Yeah, I mean, overall, yeah, I think it's one of the most in-depth looks at how this world could take shape. They call them hives. I mean, there's no geographical boundaries are kind of meaningless. And if I recall correctly, this isn't spoiling anything. There was this major religious war, and it kind of
With
shook
fire,
everybody up into thinking we've got to, when we come back, we've got to do something different. We need to make something that lasts.
so
And so
that
that
predates the first novel. This
yeah,
war,
right,
religious war.
yeah, it's in the past. The novel begins, and it's like been, I think, like 300 years of relative peace and prosperity, but now things are they're starting to, there's starting to be some ruptures.
Right.
So it really really delves in. I mean, there's a chapter, or an extended sequence in one of the books. I think it's the third one, where they're actually discussing policy and legal arguments in kind of their version of Parliament or whatever,
Right.
and they're actually, I mean, getting down to actually how laws are written, and it's just it's very interesting, really dense. I thought at times it kind of got too detailed. It was a bit of a slog, at points.
In the
But
third book.
the overall story and what she does, because there's a whole other aspect that involves mythology that I just won't get into, but it's just this grand, epic, gigantic story. And in the meantime, it reveals some potential workable solutions to a lot of the problems that societies have in trying to get along.
Right.
Because in the future, when you grow up, you're free to choose whatever. Again, they call them hives. You're free to choose whatever hive you want to go to, and you can switch hives if you want to. So it's very, very free. It's a very
Right.
free
Plus,
society.
plus, if you don't want to join any hive, then you're part of the gray hive.
Yeah, you're part. Yeah, you're actually part of a kind of another hive, and so beyond just I mean, just amazing world building. In fact, it's the first one is like so dense. You got to hang with it for a while, but you had to hang with Dune.
Oh
Dune.
yeah,
The first 100 pages of Dune, you're just kind of going, I don't know what the hell's going right. This is exacerbated because a lot of the characters, that have leadership positions in the different hives, they also have multiple names,
yeah.
right?
Oh
So
god.
it's like trying to keep track of who's who and what's, it can
Okay.
be,
Let's put it this way: that knowing you, though, the fact that despite that, you still like the series is
for sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could always like nitpick, certain aspects, and I'm just gonna be, again, straight up. I think this, in my opinion, this would have been a really good trilogy,
Ah.
right?
So
It kind of, it's not like it's wearing out its welcome as much as it's just at a certain point, it's not really bringing anything new to the table, but
uh,
it brings so much to the table.
are you saying that
It's
the
worth
last book
reading
is
the
an afterthought?
series. What's that?
Are you saying the last book is an afterthought?
Oh, no, 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 not at all, not at all. I'm just, I mean,
Oh, but they could have
throughout.
combined, maybe shrunk the will to battle and collapse
Yeah, I
everything.
just think, yeah, certain things, because all of the books except for the second one, Seven Surrenders, is tight. It's the shortest, like by far, and it's tight, and it kind of makes one major plot development happen in the whole. series, and it, by that time you're kind of familiar with the world, so you're kind of getting a grip on what's going on. So that's probably the most satisfying, overall read.
Right.
But again, it's not like, it's a struggle to finish. It's definitely worth reading. And again, it's the most uh, we talked about stand on Zanzibar being dense. This thing is, man. I mean, she's got like every little thing, and again, not just the ideas, but some of these characters are, I mean, unforgettable. One of, I don't think there's like a main protagonist. There kind of is one character who's kind of like, you know, kind of always popping up throughout the thing and kind of holds the whole narrative together. But there's so many really fascinating characters it's beyond just good ideas. It's good writing, good structure, good storytelling overall. Just with those couple of little caveats, yeah, I would highly recommend anybody read this, because it's a good one if you like political science fiction. If you don't, you're just going to be going, nah. So yeah, that's a big commitment right there.
And what does terra ignota mean, literally?
The unknown land.
Okay.
Yeah, there's this extended scene in kind of their Senate, their Parliament. I forget what they called it. The gathering of all the leaders of all the different hives. They actually get into the nitty gritty, and there's this kind of paradox. How far to take things in the interest of the society at whole. It just really, I think you would find it really fascinating. Yeah. I did, just from that aspect alone. But then there's all this other, stuff going on along with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does sound interesting. And again, you don't seem to be the kind of person that wants to read policy papers or whatever, that kind of nitty gritty detail. So the very fact that you found it immersive actually says a lot.
Yeah. Again, if this was, I compare something like this to the Three Body Problem. That trio of books. I really liked the first one. The second one, it was getting kind of, and the third one for me, it just didn't work, because it became all about these mind-blowing ideas, and they were mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But that, it just wasn't enough for me. I found the characters, like weak. I mean, really, really weak.
Right.
Doing stuff that didn't make any sense. You had leaders who were like really leaders, and then they just crumble to these almost childlike, afraid to do anything. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. So, but in this, she keeps the humanity, throughout the entire series. Gets a little self-indulgent in certain respects, but definitely keeps the humanity throughout the entire series.
And by humanity, just kind of like, it feels like real human beings.
Yeah, and the human condition. Like I said, she introduces some pretty interesting side ideas that I don't want to talk about that aren't that aren't so rooted in realistic political machinations, but that she pulls it off too is the other thing. It's like, you're gonna do what? You're gonna bring in what now? And it still works, and still, by the end it does pack a punch. It's it definitely leaves a mark. It's a singular achievement, I would say, certainly in political science fiction, but in science fiction writ large, it's kind of a singular achievement.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You can't really get away from politics in that sense. How do you make decisions in a society? Who
Yeah.
should make decisions in society? How should that be structured so that uh, everybody's interests are somehow included? Uh, and despite disagreements, you can still come up with some sort of consensus and compromises that everybody can live with.
Yeah, yeah,
I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah,
that's
and shit. Yeah, the series delves very deep into how one thing affects one hive's decisions, affect another hive's decisions. Creates strange bedfellows in some scenarios, and it's very very. It really gets into all the different possibilities, and yeah, again, kind of striving for that, you know, utopia. I think utopia is such a loaded word, right? It's such a loaded word. Like everything's perfect. It's like, I
no,
don't know about you, but yeah, utopia is like you have a system where when there are disagreements, you can work them out without blowing somebody up.
right.
It's not about
Uh,
everybody's happy all the time.
yeah, well, and I think the other notion of utopia too is it's not, yeah, if a utopia is oppressive, it's not really a utopia. So, do people lead fulfilling lives or not? That's to me, that's another critical part of uh, what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and what you were saying, yeah, how do you set up a structure so that you have as much as you possibly can, you have a system that works for everybody.
Right,
Even if you think, right, that faction over there, they're scufflaws, or right, they're not pulling their own weight, whatever. You still have to include them,
right,
in the picture. So, you know, that's I mean, I think that's probably the greatest barrier to having further advanced a workable society today is at some point we just cut off certain people, certain ideas, certain ways of functioning. It's just like we just can't have that. So other than trying to figure out how you could work with this, faction or this ideology, we just kind of try to suppress it, even
right.
even if it's for the obvious good of everybody.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is all about it. Okay, man. Yeah, we got for an hour and a half. Yeah, thanks for hanging in there. Um,
Yeah,
and
thank
cool,
you
dude.
too.
Yeah, you'd be down for doing one on TV
Series,
series and
maybe series and movies.
movies.
Um,
Yeah, I think.
yeah, and again, hopefully we can get Steven for the next one.
Yeah, yeah.
That would
Oh,
be
oh,
really
for sure
good.
we'll get him. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe try to work it out so that it works for him.
Yeah, yeah. He said that this week was particularly busy, so he said he's definitely down for doing it. So yeah, if you're pretty flexible, then and I'm very
Well,
flexible,
yeah.
as long
Obviously,
as you got advance notice, right?
yeah, exactly. I mean, I've sort of loaded my. I'm retired. You're retired. I've loaded myself with all this stuff that I do, and try to keep on top of. And plus, we have a anyway. There's health issues with our cat, and stuff like that. Stuff I have to deal with, or I have to go, get blood tests or something. So
Yeah, just life in general. Yeah. No,
right,
but this is cool. again, I can see doing this on different topics beyond science fiction, maybe getting more into some of these ideas, because I know you're very much interested. You know, we're both news junkies, both
Right.
political junkies. Yeah, I'm just fascinated by the whole thing because I'm so into stories, and you can't get more drama than politics.
Uh, could we have some better stories?
We have some better stories, exactly,
Jesus
dude. Yeah.
Christ.
So yeah, we'll get into that down the road as things go by. So thanks again for being on, bro, and
Okay, no
we'll
problem.
have you on again.
Okay.
All right, man.
Yay.
See ya.